SIA Fest, hosted by Tata Power and News18 Network, with a vision to foster green leadership by focusing on creating a roadmap for India's power sector and envisioning clean energy security for all. The festival witnessed global experts, industry leaders, policymakers, and influencers engage in stimulating conversations to accelerate the transition to clean energy and help India achieve its climate goals.
Tata Power is India's largest integrated power company that has committed to net zero targets by 2045. Dr. Sinha, sir, it's a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for joining us on stage, and I request you to please share your vision on how Tata Power is working towards making sustainable attainable. Over to you, sir.
The IPCC came out with a report, and the Secretary General of UN, Antonio Guterres, declared that the ongoing climate crisis is code red for all of us, and we need to combat this. And we need to combine our forces to really avert this catastrophe. This poses a very important concern for us as to how we transition to clean energy. And it indeed requires very strong and urgent action. The moment is not tomorrow, but the moment to act is today and now. And over the last few months, our movement of sustainable is attainable is to enable a better understanding on the conversation around sustainability. It has actually helped us to create a narrative that how diverse set of stakeholders, whether it is government, it is public institutions, private players, communities, people like all of us, have to play a critical role in the change. And with their active participation only, this change can happen. We have fortunate today that we have the Honorable Power Minister, who himself has been championing this, and we will get to hear him later in the afternoon about what are the changes which are possible. How do we make the change? How do we embrace the solarization of agriculture through solar pumps? How do we bring electrification to the remotest area, whether it is through microgrids or through the normal power supply? How do we bring the commercial and industrial establishments, the homes, to adopt rooftop solutions? How does the policy gives the momentum to all these changes? How do we use energy efficient equipments and devices, including smart metering, to bring the change? And this is because we believe in the philosophy of life, which our Honorable Prime Minister had mentioned some time back. I believe that this is truly the decade. In fact, many people tell me, and I also believe this is the decade of India. Our country can actually promote and show to the world that how, as a growing economy, India is driving this transition with clean energy. And this will be the new India, which has the benefit of demographics. It has the benefit of the best of digital technology. It has the benefit of decarbonization. It has the benefit of making local supply chain, the deglobalization. So I think there is a great opportunity and a platform which has been created. And once again, thank you to Network 18 for creating this platform for us to take this right across the country. As I come to the end, I think there is a responsibility for us to make the changes. As we create this legacy of a greener and healthier, sustainable world, I think each one of us will be the catalyst and the champion of the changes and the future that we create for the people. In fact, I always tell my team कि ये मिलके हम लोग को देश को ग्रीन करना है, मिलके हम लोग को पावर को ग्रीन करना है.
हमारे गांव में बिजली कब आएगी? अंधेरे में कुछ मिलता ही नहीं है. माँ, मेरे ग्लव्स कहाँ हैं?
वही होगी. आने पोमो चार पे करने कोस लास्ट पुंग से ते ठोना दूर तो जाऊं.
बैकपैक में भर के ख्वाबों का दम, बढ़ते कदम को दे के रिदम, थकते फिसलते संभलते बढ़ते चले हम ठंडी हवा से लड़ते.
ले है जुले यार, आज फिर से लाइट नहीं है। ऐसे में हमारी ट्रेनिंग कैसे होगी यार?
ट्रेनिंग तो जरूर होगी। एकेडमी का लाइट तो सोलर पावर से ऑन हो गया, अब अपनी पावर ऑन करे।
है तेरे साथ सूरज की चमक, तुझे कोई रोक ना पाएगा। मेरे बढ़ते कदम से ही तो कल नया सवेरा आएगा।
Come on guys!
रोक दे एक हाथ से जो सर्द हवा का शोर है, जाग उठे अंधेरा भी, ये तेरा ही तो जोर है। होगी रोशन हर राह, तू चल दे पावर को ग्रीन सिग्नल।
जुड़िए न्यूज 18 नेटवर्क और टाटा पावर के सस्टेनेबल इज अटेनेबल मिशन से और आइए दीजिए पावर को ग्रीन सिग्नल। The SIA Fest, hosted by Tata Power and News 18 Network, garnered the support of Union Minister of Power and New and Renewable Energy, R.K. Singh, to discuss and understand how the government is working towards meeting the climate targets and leading the fight against climate change.
Thank you so much for taking time out to be with us here for this very special campaign that we've been running for the past 10 months, Sustainable is Attainable. Let's talk about the energy transition, because while it is a challenge and it is a global challenge, in India it's also being seen as an opportunity. In fact, if I were to point out, most...
we are a leader in energy transition. You see, all these people started giving us speeches, around to the world, to the developing world, as to how you need to cut down on emissions on fossil fuels. Our per capita emissions are 1/3 of the global average. Despite that, we have emerged as a leader in energy transition. We were the fastest in achieving our NDCs. We had pledged in COP21 in Paris in 2015 that by 2030 we'll have 40% of our capacity coming from non-fossil fuel sources by 2030. Today, I'm already at 42.8%. This is 9 years in advance. So we are a leader. And not only in energy transition, also in energy efficiency, also in reduction of emissions per se. I mean, we have reduced our emissions, by almost about 30%. We had pledged 33% by 2030. It's already at 30%, and that's why we have upped our ambition that by 2030, we will reduce our emissions by about 45%.
You talked about the transition, you talked about the big targets and the audacious goals that we've set for ourselves. In terms of investments, the IEA estimates that we will require about $160 billion annually in terms of investments. What is the role that you see, especially of government financing, of private sector financing, multilateral financing, in order for us to be able to make this energy transition? What do you expect, especially in the next few years?
What we have done is that we have structured it. We have structured our systems in such a way that they are transparent. We have de-risked the system, so I get investments. I don't need to put in any money, any government money, in setting up capacity. I just call for bids, and those bids are hotly contested. You can ask Praveer, etc. They, all the companies, they invest. And they are getting financed by all the major funds in the world, because we are one of the fastest growing markets in renewable energy capacity. We are the most attractive market. The problem is translating that capacity into dispatchable capacity. Now that requires storage. Now storage is expensive. Today, the largest storage capacity installed is 230 megawatts in California. There are larger capacities under installation, but they are still under installation. We have we finalized a bid for 1,000 megawatt hours, which is one of the biggest capacities in the world. That's what we are today. We are world leaders.
I want to understand from you in terms of the execution roadmap, in terms of priorities, going back to what we heard there from Dr. Sinha, both in terms of energy security and energy independence. If you can lay out for me what we should expect in 2023.
The great news is that our economy is growing at 7%. Now that growth can only happen if we have electricity, because electricity powers everything. You can't have growth. You'll have zero growth without electricity. So you need electricity. So I'll continue pushing for capacity addition. Bulk of that capacity will be non-fossil, hydro, renewables. My first priority is what? My first priority is to make sure that there is sufficient electricity for growth. Second, of course, is that I would prefer the electricity to be as green as possible. Incidentally, I have also made another rule that you as citizens can ask your DISCOM that I want my electricity to be 50% green, I want my electricity to be 75% green, I want my electricity to be 100% green, and it will be incumbent upon the DISCOM to give you that. And of course, you can buy green electricity from anybody, will give you free transmission. That you must do. So I'll prefer green, no doubt about it. But I'm not going to compromise with the availability of power for growth, sorry. And once the battery becomes viable, once I have more and more, right now I just have about 4,000 odd megawatts of pumped hydro. Once that capacity reaches about 20,000 megawatts, etc., then I think gradually we'll be able to wean out the thermal power plants. And this is not me alone talking. You see, when you had the Ukraine crisis and when the Russian gas was cut off, suddenly the entire sort of developed world started talking about energy security. Earlier, they were talking only about energy transition. Now, they talk about energy security first. So for us, that's true. Energy security and availability of energy for our growth is, priority one.
Tata Power and News18 Network's SIA Fest served as the perfect platform to celebrate the champions of change.
Ladies and gentlemen, our first champion is Cochin International Airport. The Indian government is actively promoting the use of renewable energy at domestic and international airports, and a big contribution comes from Cochin International Airport, which has become the world's first green airport. Next champion of change. UNDP has appointed her as India's first national advocate for sustainable development goals, and she is none other than Bhumi Pednekar.
Humblest way accepting this award. Thank you so much.
Our next champion of change is a climate innovator and the founder of Cool the Globe, an app for climate action with users from over 110 countries. Prachi Shivgaonkar, congratulations. And our next champion of change is Blue Smart Mobility. Blue Smart is India's first and leading all-electric ride-hailing mobility service with a mission to steer urban India towards sustainable, clean mobility. Tushar Garg, congratulations.
These individuals and organizations are truly helping India move towards a more sustainable and inclusive future. The SIA Fest saw ambassadors of 4 very diverse countries share insights on how their nations are pushing for decarbonizing the global energy sector. For a timely net zero transition, stronger political commitment, capital access, and climate justice must be unlocked. The SIA Fest saw ambassadors of 4 very diverse countries share insights on how their nations are pushing for decarbonizing the global energy sector and transformational policy initiatives that are helping them achieve their respective climate goals.
Israel and India have a very close partnership when it comes to sustainable development, sustainable energy solutions. Could you explain to our audience this afternoon what is the way forward for storage? Because that's one of the key challenges when it comes to sustainable energy, the idea of being able to store them in a sustainable fashion.
Israel in general, when we look, we are a very tiny country of 10 million people. We are responsible for less than 0.2 of the CO2 emissions of the world. So we try to behave ourselves and to set challenges also to our own behavior. But more importantly is that we are trying to give technological solutions into clean technology in general. And storage is one of the big issues that is dealt in Israel. Just recently, to mention one, there is an Israeli company named Finergy that has with Indian Oil a joint venture on aluminum air batteries. Why is it so significant? Because aluminum is something that India has in abundance. Yeah. And they have also vehicles, but also they're going to give backing to antenna stations, and they have different agreements already and contracts here at this joint venture. So this is one avenue. There are many avenues that we are looking into technologically, but for us, storage undoubtedly is one of the big hurdles in order to make sustainable, more affordable and more constant, and not having to need a backing of fossil fuels to the clean energy.
Ambassador Kwani, there was this initiative that was taken by multiple governments, Panama, Uruguay, and Norway. It's called the Clean Energy Marine Hubs Initiative. It's a worldwide cross-sector initiative aimed at catalyzing the supply of green fuels. Could you tell us a little bit more about this multilateral arrangement that you have with these countries? And again, what may a country like India learn from your experience?
This is a process that started in the conference in Egypt, where all these countries and these governments put themselves together. And they established a goal that is going to be, in a certain way, formalized right now in India in July of this year, when the Clean Energy Ministerial takes place. And the purpose is basically to adjust the mind of all the governments in order to establish, as the ambassador said, maritime transportation is something that is very important. We are also seeing how our harbor, or Montevideo, is very well important and connected also for the future, for what we think is going to be the time for green hydrogen, where you need to have harbors also be established and prepared for that. And it's something that we need to alert, and at the same time give a voice of possibility of working together in that sense. So we think that it's a very interesting and important initiative.
The European Union has just announced a massive European Green Deal, a new European Green Deal, where the European Union intends to be carbon neutral, I think by 2050. You also have specific targets for the turn of the decade. How do you intend to get to that target?
We already see extreme weather events around the world, everywhere. No continent is spared, be it Asia or Europe. So starting from this proposition, we have made in the European Union the reduction of emissions a must. Through the Green Deal, we have set the target of becoming carbon neutral by 2050, as you said, and we have enshrined this in law. That's very important because it's not just a vague aspiration. It's now a legal commitment. And very importantly also, we have set a clear roadmap on how to get there. A roadmap which is becoming more stringent as we speak. We had originally foreseen to reduce by 40% our emissions by 2030. Now we have decided to reduce emission by 55% in what we call our vision Fit for 55. How can we achieve that? Well, it requires a multifaceted effort. We need to be energy efficient. Yeah. That's obviously a basic rule which is valid all over the world. We need to switch to a greener energy mix, and that's why we are accelerating on our transition towards renewable, be it solar or offshore wind.
The Danish government has a tie-up with the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, IIT Madras, where they will be conducting research projects on next-generation fuels as well as energy systems. It's called this is part of the Indo-Danish Green Strategic Partnership. How important is R&D? What is this about, this technology partnership that you have with IIT Madras?
It's simply about utilizing the resources that you have here in India and the skills that we have in Denmark. India is a lab at large, and whatever you are good at here, take for instance the solar power. It was very, very expensive to start with. Now it's so low, and I'm sure that whatever we put into India would develop cheaper affordable technologies. So we have to invest in it, but we can't do it without the private sector. You can ask your government, I can ask my government, I can ask Ugo and the Commission to do whatever they should do for us, but it boils down to the private sector to deliver. And on top of that, your Prime Minister launched the Life for Mission. Yeah. We all have to take individual responsibility. We can't just park all the issues, challenges with the governments. We have to take actions, all of us. You, me, and all of you sitting down there.
How recent geopolitical events have put the impetus on countries to broaden their energy basket. The impetus now is to go for green energy, clean and more renewable energy. Could you just elaborate on that briefly, please?
Yes, well, I think it's clear to us all that we need to reduce emissions drastically or face the consequences. Some of the consequences of climate change are with us to stay. That's why adaptation is also so important. And that's why the European Union and India have pushed and promoted the creation of a loss and damage fund. But we need to reduce emissions. In order to do that, there is not a silver bullet. It's about taking a holistic view, and a number of measures are necessary. We need to be more efficient in the use of energy, so we need to be energy efficient. We need to switch to greener sources of energy. We need a greener energy mix. So the switch to renewables is absolutely indispensable. And for renewables, we need to look at the full spectrum. We need to look at solar, we need to look at offshore wind. Sure. And I think India and the European Union together can give a particularly positive contribution to this shift. Because let me mention here, as we transition towards a greener energy mix, we also need to make sure that we diversify our global supply chains. And that's part of the one of the needs for success.
All right. Thank you very much, Ambassador Stuto, Ambassador Swain, Ambassador Guani, and Ambassador Gillon. Can we have a round of applause for the ambassadors who've given us their experiences in their respective countries as to how sustainable is indeed attainable.
Next week, we bring to you more from Tata Power and News18 Network's Sustainable is Attainable SIA Fest.